Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Liz Savillon, and thank you for joining me on another episode. Here we talk about all things community, friendship, connection, our mental health, and how to embrace our story. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. All of that helps us to grow, and I'm just so excited for you tuning into this week's episode. I know last week we talked about community and like how to get out there to make friends, and I feel like that relates to a lot of people in adulthood because I think that a big part of it is that your friendships shift and change as you get older. Your circle gets smaller. And today's episode, I wanted to do like a little catch up, but also share lessons that I have learned in my later 20s because I am turning 29 like next week. So I'm like, all right, I'm like getting there, almost 30 my last year. And I was just reflecting on what that has looked like in my later 20s because I feel like my mindset shift. After 25, I'm telling you, the frontal lobe. And then after that, you're like, all right, I see things very differently. If you are an Orlando lady, we are actually having a She Cultivates Cultivating Her conference September 21st, and I want you to be there. There is going to be amazing panelists and guests, all different entrepreneurs, creatives that have storefronts, that have different services, that have literally taken the leap of being an entrepreneur. And I feel like a huge part of that is not doing it alone. So if you are someone that has thought about it or wants to be an entrepreneur or needs support or needs guidance on business strategy, marketing, how to network, how to get out there, like how to feel like work with your mindset when it comes to navigating life as a business owner, make sure to check us out at shecultivatesorl.com. And there are just a few VIP tickets left and a few of our general admission tickets. And it's going to be amazing. Our branding, we are definitely leveling up this year. And I feel like a huge part of my walk, even with my events and She Cultivates, is like stepping out in faith and being like, all right, we're going to elevate, invest in it. And the past year, I feel like I have invested a lot into She Cultivates. And I'm just so excited and happy to see the growth and the people that are connecting and building genuine friendships, not only in life, in motherhood, but also even in business. So make sure to check us out at shecultivatesorl.com. A little life update, a little girl chat before we start. I feel like the past few weeks, I had talked about like my mental health and what I was kind of navigating through. And I am on an anti-inflammatory, I would say, diet or cleanse. I went to kind of figure out, again, like you guys know, I've been on a journey of like my hormones. Now it is more like I'm checking for autoimmune disease. And so that has been a little scary and something that I haven't shared too much about, but I did share on my social media that I have been making some changes of things that I am cutting out of my diet completely. And the first thing I had mentioned before of like the coffee thing, I'm not going to give up coffee just yet because I feel like I'm going to see all the other things. But I did find out I was allergic to cats, which what's funny is that I'm not like a cat person, but I literally get allergies and like my eyes like swell. Dust, so like cleaning days, and grass. The thing is about grass is like we live in Florida and it's like you don't know. So now I have to figure out like what type of grass, like what does that look like? And like what that means is like when I have a flare up, it can be like a rash that I get or like congestion, kind of like I have like allergies of like a cold symptoms. And so now I'm going to check foods because there's certain foods that can be good for us, but our body just doesn't digest them properly, doesn't react to them properly. And I know I had a friend of mine that's like, I'm allergic to avocados. And I'm like, no freaking way, because that's something that I eat like almost every day. And so avocado oil, things like that. And so I feel like that's going to be the next step, and then figuring out other things in my health. So that is kind of like what I've been doing. And I feel like in your later 20s, I feel like things start changing in your body and kind of figuring out what that looks like. And I have gotten a few questions on dating, and I am not dating. I actually am leaving dating, don't quote me, until 2025. And so I am open, but I think I've just had like just working through navigating some things in my personal life that I'm like, I think that next year, you know? And it's funny because sometimes I talk to my friends that are dating, and it's like, I know it can happen anytime, but I'm also like, I feel like I'm still at the place where I'm like enjoying my singlehood. I have still hard days like anybody else, but I think like in general, I'm just focusing on my career, focusing on other projects. And that's also why I kind of have taken an unofficial break. I took like July and August to kind of like not post as much, kind of be offline a little bit. And that was really helpful towards my mental health. So honestly, if you haven't done that, recommend, because I just felt like, I don't know, this like go of like, I need to post, I need to be active, I need to like create content strategies and like, the follower growth. And I kind of fell into that. And even like the comparison. I've been doing this for 4 years, the podcast, and I feel like sometimes you look like in the reality of like, it's not that I compare myself to other people. It's more of like a specific person. It's more like, okay, these are the things I'm working on. And in 4 years, shouldn't I see like XYZ success, And that can be discouraging. And I felt that discouragement of like, okay, like, what do I need to change? What do I need to do? Is it like my personality? Is it certain things? Like, I was trying to navigate through making sure that I have the best mindset when I'm creating content of like, what is my why? Like, what am I doing this for? And what is important to me, And we actually had an event for She Cultivates this month, and I received, so we always write like some kind of encouragement for other people at our events. And so I asked like everybody if they can write a little note to someone that's like working on their dream that is having a hard day. Like, what would you tell them? And I wrote down a card, and I was like, all right. And so towards the end, when people are leaving, everyone gets a card, and that's their encouragement. So like, it's anonymous. Tell me how I got my card back. And what it said, it was, remember your why, and remember why you're doing what you're doing. Like, what you're doing matters. Do not give up. And I'm like, yes, I know, speaking to my own self. But I think those things of reminding yourself and those moments that you can doubt along your journey. I haven't really talked about the entrepreneurship side much on this podcast, but I think that that's a huge part of mindset and like what you believe is possible for you, and having the courage to go after it and being consistent with it. To make it happen. So I feel like that is like the mindset is such a huge part when it comes to having a small business or, going off and doing something on your own. So that was kind of like, I would say July, August, and just managing my anxiety. I feel like I'm working through it. I'm showing up and as much as I can. And I'm still working through that. I'm also taking like certain supplements to help for that, but like I'm really trying to do it like holistically and doing all the right things to manage that, and really to still show up even if I still feel a certain way, because I feel like sometimes we let our feelings dictate what we do, and it's like our feelings are not facts. We validate our feelings and we give space to them, but we still, at the end of the day, have to remind ourselves the truth and have to remind ourselves like what is real, not what sometimes our mind lies to us. And I share something like that on social media of like, sometimes your anxiety lies to you. And there was a moment in this past like month that there was a situation that happened that I was so in my head about. And when I tell you, I got like of kind of like what I projected of my anxiety of like, this person might not like me, or like, I'm not doing good at this. And then something happened that I got this opportunity. And it was like that reminder of like, you are qualified for this. Like, why do you keep, for myself, this is me and myself talk like in real time, like, why do you keep doubting what you know that God put in your heart and that you should be doing? Like, why do you always go back to like, I'm not qualified enough, or like, I'm not good enough for this? Like, that's not the truth, And so combating that and making sure to share and say what's the truth is always going to make the difference. And so our mental health is super important. It's super important to manage it, but it's also making sure to not let it dictate our whole life, and then we identify ourselves as like, I am this way and that's why I can't do XYZ, you know? So yeah, that's kind of what little life update. I am now in September going into like my birthday, like our events and planning, and I've been creating some kind of like coaching, I would say, and some online resources for you guys. So make sure to check out She Cultivates RL. I launched something this past week and I'm just excited for you guys to see it. I get a lot of questions about events, coordinating, creating a community, and like how to actually like foster relationships. Maybe like what questions to ask, what things, how to make those connections. And so I hope that that is helpful. And that's a few of the things that I will be launching that will be coming out soon, because I want to make sure that like I add value to alongside this podcast. And so I wanted to go into lessons that I learned in my later 20s. I think after 25, there was just a shift. And I'm telling you, I listened back to like the episode that I did on my birthday in 2020. And I'm like, girl, you knew nothing. Like, you knew nothing. You knew at the time what you thought was good. But at the same time, like, I see now certain things that I have worked through that have been like huge lessons that have shaped me today. And so I think that in my earlier 20s, I struggled big time with like the control part of not releasing the control and wanting my life to look a certain way. And I feel like I have finally accepted that life will not go as we plan, and releasing that control to God and trusting that He has the best plan for us is number one. I think that as much as I can struggle sometimes with my anxiety of like my thoughts or like, oh my God, but this, I know God has always provided. God has always made a way. Things have always worked out in some way. And even if they haven't worked out, it has been for a reason. And I'm like, wow, that didn't work out, but then this happened. So there was always a plan for even the redirections, the rejections that we go through. And I have had in the past 4 years of my life have realized how many pivots I've had to make, but they've helped me to build my character, and like to be resilient and to um, not be so easily to just like give up on things. It's like, all right, we have to pivot, we have to change, and like being flexible. I feel like that maybe, or adaptable, because I feel like I used to be maybe a rigid person, to be honest. Maybe like more like, this is what it needs to be and this is how it has to go. And so it was hard for me to adjust to change. And I feel like that is a key thing that I've learned in my later 20s. It's like being willing to adapt to the changes that will come, and not thinking that your life is, even the good moments, like when they're good, you enjoy them, but knowing that it could not be good, and you'll be okay. Like there's always an ending and a starting. And I think a huge part also of your later 20s is just the confidence you have in yourself, of what you do, of who you are, like certain values that it's like, even if people tell you like, no, this is the way, you're so secure more in who you are and what's important to you and what you're not willing to negotiate. Which in my early 20s, it was like going with the waves, like we're going over there and then we're going over here, which in now I have found such acceptance in who I am and like what I do, and confident in like that I do have something to say that is important, and with what I'm doing, like that it might not look like other people, so I think that self-acceptance is key in giving you that confidence. And the more you do it, the more you step out into like what's maybe not popular, to be honest, or maybe what's not trendy, or what's not what everyone else is doing, and you start kind of figuring out your voice. You gain that confidence, so that even if people are saying that you should go left, you're like, yeah, but I'm going to do this. I think a small example of that is the drinking this year. I have mentioned before that I felt like I've never been like a drinker, someone that drinks alcohol. So I've never been someone that likes alcohol, but I always felt like socially I had to do it. And I felt very off if I didn't, because like people ask you like, why? So I feel like this year, since January, I have not drank. And I decided to tell people, like, even when we're out, like, oh, like, I'm gonna get a mocktail or I'm gonna get water, and be okay with the discomfort of that and being like, this is what I'm gonna do. But you can still do what you want to do, which I don't judge people that do or don't. But that's a small example of something that before I was like trying to fit into what I felt like everybody else, like to make people feel comfortable. And it's like, no, this is what I'm gonna do because it's my body, and like I have to, um, I don't want to, as a simple, my mind changed. I don't want to anymore. It's not what I want to do. I don't like it. And that's maybe in your life seeing how like you start being like for sure about things, like stuff that you're not going to change or that you do want to change. And no matter what people say, it's like that's what you're going to do. And so I was like, wow, in my earlier 20s, I really struggled with that. And now I have like such more assurance of that. I think a huge part of also your later 20s is your friendships, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Your friendships do change, and you grieve a lot of friendships that maybe you thought were going to be there forever. Maybe you had in your earlier 20s and you've known them for a long time, and the relationship shifts, or you aren't on the same, you don't have the same mindset or goals, or um, maybe you outgrow a certain friendship, but there's still love. It's not that something happened, but it can still be a loss that you feel. And that's also good. I think that there has been people in my life that have come that it's kind of like that quote that says, like, you have yet to meet all the people that you will ever love. Like, there's so many people that you don't even know yet. I think in my like 20 and then my 25, I was like, oh my God, these are my only people. And I've met like such amazing people over the last few years that have been such a pivotal part to my growth, to my life, to just, elevating, helping, and encouraging me throughout my journey, that I'm like, wow, like I never knew these people were there. So being open to that and knowing that your friendships are going to shift and change, and that's okay. And um, knowing when it's time to let certain friendships go, or not try to force relationships or friendships, and not taking things personal when that's the case. And you guys can go back into podcasts that we did with like about friendships and all of that. But I think that friendships is something that's harder. There was someone this week that I was looking at like venues, and I was like, oh, like I'm gonna do a friendship social here. And they were like, really? Like people really struggle with friendships nowadays? Like women in their later, like in their 20s and 30s. I'm like, yeah, friendships is hard. And he's like, for guys it's so different. He's like, if we like vibe over something, like we're hanging out. Like if you play this sport, I play this sport, cool. Like, and I was like, you're right. It's much more simpler, it seems, than over here. I feel like we need to have like depth in our relationship. Our expectations are so different. And when people recommend a friend, like let's say they're like, oh, hey, like I think you would really click with this girl. Like, I feel like women are sometimes like skeptical. They're like, I need to meet her first. I need to check out her vibe. I don't know if I'm gonna like, we really are like, we overthink those situations versus guys. So we're just built different. In good and in good ways. And so I was just thinking about that. Like, I know that that's an area that a lot of us maybe struggle with, like our community. And so how important my community is, very important. I think that that is something that for life, no matter what stage and age you're in, I think community is super important. But I know that there's like the shedding of certain, like even you change as a person, and you change like every 7 years, and your friendship dynamics do too. And I think I never thought that was going to happen. I'm like, it's going to be the same people. But if you think about who was your closest three people at 20 and 25, it might have changed. Maybe you have like one or two that are still the same. And so that has been a huge learning part, and being okay with that. I think another part is not seeing things as like a failure, either if a friendship doesn't work out, or a business idea doesn't work out, or you don't get that dream job, or you aren't at the certain age that you thought you were going to be by this point with all these successes, or like whatever your failures or seem like a failure. It's like those aren't failure, those are opportunity for growth. Um, I think that you will learn so much more from your failures because those will show you things that maybe you should do differently, things and opportunities that come from those failures, and maybe things to pivot. I think that adaptability and flexibility comes a lot with failure. It's like, all right, I've learned so much, especially in the entrepreneurship journey in the past, I would say year, of like not seeing things as failures. It's like, okay, that didn't work out. What's the plan? Like, let's pivot, let's figure out. Even when she cultivates, like, I feel like our first year, we were doing a lot of stuff that I got so burnt out from because I'm like, okay, doing this and this, and like, okay, like trying to take, maybe things that I've seen before and trying to like incorporate them. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That's not our culture. And I felt like at one point I was okay, why aren't we selling out so fast? Why aren't we, like, I was focusing on stuff that like doesn't matter. And I feel like this year, reframing that to see like, okay, what worked from last year, what didn't, and how can we make it better? And we've changed some things this year that have led to other types of success, you know? So I think that those are always opportunities, you know, and even in relationships that I've been in my later 20s and even towards like in my 20s, I feel like I learned so much from those relationships. You know, even if it didn't work out, you learn so much about yourself, you learn so much about what you want, what you don't want, and just being able to navigate uh rejection, hurt, you know, as an adult. It's different. Like I feel like as you get older, you invest, like your investment and your time is so valuable. It's valuable all the time, but I feel like it just is so valuable. So who you give that time to is so important. So your friendships, your relationships, your career, making sure that you're investing in the right places. A huge part also of your later 20s is that your boundaries, I think that they just change and evolve, but they are so important. And I think that goes to like who you are as a person, like being vocal about what you want, what you don't want, and what you allow in your life. If I now I feel like I see a lot like my future self, like me a year from now, then I'm like, okay, how is this decision going to impact me a year from now? And is my future self going to be proud of this decision? You know? I think in my earlier 20s, I was really about like the impulse of the moment of what I wanted to feel at the moment, or like, I know this is toxic, but like, I'm going to still do it, you know? And now I have moments that I'm like, man, my toxic self is telling me that that would be a good idea. But I also know that I will not be proud of myself if I make that choice, you know? So I feel like I have like that like pause now of not being so impulsive in my decisions and making sure to think things through, because those decisions, like, it's all the of your daily habits, the things that you do, the decisions that can impact your future. Like, and I think that when you see it in that space, then you're like, okay, the decisions that I make today do matter. And like, it might be a feel good moment for right now, but that's not going to help me later on, you know? And that's in every area, not just like relationships. It can be your health. It can be work decisions that you make, people that you surround yourself around, financial decisions. I know that like in your earlier 20s, and even me, I'm like, I went on like so many trips, did reckless stuff in my in my early 20s because I'm like YOLO, living my life. And then now I think that even financial decisions, like, okay, how do I want to have for savings or investment? And like, what do I need to do to make more income, you know, or like make sure that that I can invest in properties, invest in different things like that. Like, I think that my mindset is much different than like the luxuries of like, okay, I want to spend X, Y, and Z on a purse. I was actually talking to someone about that I'm like, right now, I don't know if I would spend like $2,000 on a bag. I think that, like, I think about that. I'm like, okay, but like, I can do something for like an event, or like put a down payment on something, or go on a trip, that's going to last forever, And so I think that those priorities do change as you get older and you're figuring that out. So your finances do matter, and I know that especially like in where we're living at today, it's like I know that everybody feels that pressure of like, okay, like you're just trying to like make it through, but just prioritizing that too, to know that it's like that is going to help you set up, like if you set that up in your 20s, like you can be in a better place in your 30s and 40s and all of that. Another huge one, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is like health is wealth, of like you being healthy is so important. And healthy, again, it's more of like the holistic wellness for me. It's not only about like how you externally look, it's like you being good on the inside, like making sure to go to the doctor, do the routine checkups, do all of that. Your hormones. I know so many women right now that are going through like hormone issues, autoimmune disease, which that I've been looking up of like to see like what is the biggest factor. And they're saying that a lot of the stuff that products, food, things that we use like growing up have affected us and have been in our body, that it's going to show up. And women are prone to have that more than men, like more than men when it comes to certain illnesses. So I think you just become like more health conscious, that you're like, I want to live a long life. I want to be able to walk and dance and enjoy. And I always love looking at those videos of like people in like their 70s and 80s that are enjoying life, that are like dancing, running, walk, like doing the like moving, because like they took care of themselves, and making sure like that's in every way, the way that you speak to yourself, what you allow, the food that you eat, the intakes that you have, and how that's going to impact your life. So those factors I feel like are huge. And in the process of you figuring life out, knowing that your 20s and your 30s, I know in every season you're going to have things that you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but knowing that it's okay to not have it all together, that you try different things. For me, at least, I feel like my 20s has been about trying different things that I enjoy, hobbies, different things. I have worked in marketing, in makeup, in just so many things. I even have my real estate license. Like I have so many things that I have explored and allowed myself to do, to continue. And I know I'm going to evolve and change, but I'm now in a closer path of where I'm going. And so just have grace with yourself if you're still figuring that out, and know that you can start again at any age. You can try something new at any age, and there's no like cap to that. I think that in my earlier 20s, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a social media manager. I'm going to do social media and events, because that's what I was doing like in corporate. And I then started pivoting that, and it looks the same, but it's also a little different, today. And so just being open to know that like you can change your mind and things can change, but you can also start again, and you can start over at whatever age that you want. And as we wrap up, I think that in a huge part of my 20s has been getting to know myself, my healing journey, my story, like knowing that story has been a huge part, and the lessons I have learned from my story, to be like, oh, that's where that started. That's, so that you're understanding like what your triggers are, what is valuable to you, what do you need, what do you want, and that your life aligns with that, So personal growth and you figuring out your life is a lifelong journey. You healing is a lifelong journey, but that investment is so important. And so I feel like my later 20s has been focusing on what I need to be well. In my earlier 20s, I was a huge people pleaser. I was in a codependent relationship. I feel like I had the best intention, but I just didn't know who I was and what I needed. And I feel like now I am working towards being a better version of myself, and understanding that I won't have it all together all the time and will never reach the state of perfection. But I have implemented certain things, and I think that's the other part of like when you know things, it's applying them. I think that we can know a lot of head knowledge, but it's making sure that like whatever we're learning or even intaking, like from podcasts, from books of like, yeah, I'm going to try that. It's like you actually applying it into your life. And so I've been tested and tried the past month, I think the past few months, but this year's word was assertiveness. And I think that the huge last thing of what I have learned in my later 20s is to be assertive, and knowing that confidence and being clear and is kind, being direct, knowing what you want, and not being afraid to speak up for yourself is so important. And that comes from someone that struggled for so long to like find that voice of like, okay, am I being too much? Am I being too mean? Am I being too rude? And I'm still figuring out things about like feeling comfortable in my body, like feeling comfortable in the stage that I am. I was just talking to my sister about this, that, I know that as I get older, other questions are going to come up about like, like kids, like my house, how that's going to look like. And I'm not there yet. So I'm not going to go there, like being present where I'm at and knowing that, your younger self would be proud of where you are today, and you've come so far. And that's what helps me personally not always look around to be like, okay, but I'm turning 29, like, and my last year and like my 30s. I'm actually looking forward to my 30s. I don't know about anybody else, but I genuinely feel like for me, my 20s was a lot of figuring things out, making a lot of mistakes, learning a lot of hard lessons, and a lot of tears and joy. So I'm looking forward to my 30s because I feel like I am going into it stronger than I was in my early 20s. I am thinking, my sister was talking to me about like, okay, like what are you going to do for your 29th birthday? And I'm like, I don't know if I should do like in the next year from 29 to 30, maybe like making a list of 29 things I want to do before I turn 30. I might do something like that, or maybe get a tattoo, or maybe I already started with the color change of my hair. So maybe just some changes or something like that. So I hope that you got some encouragement, were reminded about maybe some lessons. Maybe you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, or maybe you're in your 30s and you're like, I'm still learning those lessons. Like, if this episode helped you, or if you relate to something that I shared today, make sure to share with a friend. Write me on DM at Elizabeth Sabby, or you can also send us an email at beautymarkspodcast@gmail.com to let us know what you're loving, what you would love to hear more about, or even to dive into other topics. I'm going to do a Q&A episode soon about just like a little bit of everything. And so if you have any question, make sure to share it with us and we will answer it in one of the upcoming episodes. Make sure to leave a review. And on today's episode, it's like a free birthday gift. So I would really appreciate if you can take 2 seconds to go down on Apple and put in Beauty Marks Podcast, go down to the stars, put rating and review, and let us know what you're loving. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you for celebrating and being a part of this community. I appreciate you guys, and have a great week.